Today, for Devotions with Daniela, we are reading from the second book of Daniela, the Culting of America. Let's see where the Spirit guides us. A brief history of new religious movements in the United States. Except we're changing that to cults, because I don't like the name new religious movements. Cults are deeply rooted in American culture. From the moment Europeans set foot on this land, they were forming high-control separatist groups. The Puritans and the Pilgrims fled religious persecution only to turn around and enforce their own brand of rigid, exclusionary doctrine. The early U.S. became a breeding ground for groups with a strong us versus them mentality, each convinced they had the real truth and that the rest of the world was doomed, wrong, or both. Tara Isabella Burton's Strange Rites, New Religions for a Godless World profiles many of the United States' modern alternative spiritual movements, but it also offers a compelling historical overview of the nation's distinctive religious evolution, framed within the broader context of the traditionally recognized Great Awakenings. The 1730s and 1740s saw what some historians refer to as the First Great Awakening, when evangelical Christians swept across the 13 colonies in the form of revival tents. This can also be seen as the birth of the highly emotional and fanatical version of Christianity that Americans so love today, where connection to God is defined by altered states and the loss of self. People rejected the rationalism of the Enlightenment Unitarians and deists in favor of emotional preaching and an intense personal experience of the Holy Spirit. By the early 19th century, religious experimentation was everywhere. The evangelical Christian movement spread even further during this Second Great Awakening, accompanied by the growth of new denominations like Methodists and Baptists, and a growing number of fringe offshoots such as the egalitarian and celibate, hence their demise, Shaker movement, as well as the polyamorous Oneida community. Inspired by the revivals of his youth, Joseph Smith claimed to receive divine visions, publishing the Book of Mormon in 1830 and starting the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. While not all of these groups were destructive, most shared one core trait, a belief that they were the chosen ones, the enlightened, and everyone else was lost, misguided, or actively working against them. That is, 1, sacred assumption, we are the best. 2, us versus them mentality. Down with all the rest. Everybody else is against us. But things really started getting culty with the New Thought metaphysical movements of the early 1900s, which emphasized positive thinking, the power of the mind, and the idea that individuals can shape their reality through spiritual and mental discipline. Principles popularized 100 years or so later with books like The Secret and concepts like manifesting. Emerging from transcendentalism, the New Thought movement was loosely Christian and encompassed a diverse and highly individualistic hodgepodge of groups and leaders, from the spiritual healing of Christian Science to the occultism of Theosophy, to the channeling and seances of spiritualism, as well as a growing interest in Eastern spiritual traditions. Part of the Third Great Awakening, which also saw the rise of Pentecostalism, Jehovah's Witnesses, and socially minded activist churches, the New Thought movement laid the groundwork for what we now think of as New Age or alternative spirituality, and perhaps the most quintessentially American contribution to Christianity of all, the prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel is a decidedly American invention. Heavily influenced by the New Thought movement, it teaches that faith, positive thinking, and financial giving lead to material wealth and success. Rooted in the belief that thoughts shape reality, New Thought introduced ideas like the law of attraction and divine abundance, which were later rebranded in prosperity gospel theology as name it and claim it teachings. This movement also adopted New Thought's emphasis on spiritual healing, suggesting that faith can cure sickness as well as generate financial prosperity. The seed faith doctrine, which promotes giving money to religious leaders in expectation of multiplied blessings, further ties material gain to spiritual devotion. These ideas gained traction through figures like E.W. Kenyon and Oral Roberts, but modern televangelists such as Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland have globalized the message. And also, Norman Vincent Peale, who was Donald Trump's guru. The prosperity gospel is at the height of cognitive dissonance, distorting core Christian teachings like humility, self-sacrifice, and the dangers of wealth, reducing faith to a formula for financial success, and implying that poverty or illness results from a lack of belief. Believers in the prosperity gospel conveniently overlook the very clear warnings in the Bible about leaders who exploit religion for personal gain. Instead, they follow preachers who accumulate wealth while promising material blessings to followers, fitting the very description of those St. Paul cautioned against. In contemporary American culture, prosperity theology fuels megachurches and televangelism. Preachers get rich while burdening followers with unrealistic promises of wealth in exchange for faith and financial contributions. While the First and Second Great Awakenings are widely recognized by historians, the third, and particularly the fourth, are less universally accepted and remain subjects of debate. The Fourth Great Awakening typically refers to a period of social and cultural upheaval in the United States during the late 1960s through the 1970s, which saw the rise of fringe new religious movements at the same time that evangelical Christianity was regaining influence, which shaped political realignments and sparked debates over what economic historian Robert Fogel described as spiritual inequality. This period also marked the beginning of what we now think of as culture wars and the religious right. When it comes to cults, this is usually the era most people think of, when disillusioned young people, like my grandparents, sought meaning outside mainstream society, which led to the rise of high control groups. Charles Manson convinced his followers they were soldiers in an impending apocalyptic race war he termed Helter Skelter. The Children of God rebranded Christianity with a focus on love and salvation, but their practices included exploitation and abuse. You can read my story about growing up in the Children of God in Uncultured, signed copies attached here, or listen to me read it to you anywhere you get your audiobooks. Helps explain what's going on right now. Synanon began as a well-meaning drug rehab program, but spiraled into a violent and authoritarian empire, leaving a lasting impact on 12-step and other recovery communities that can be felt to this day. Despite many high-profile exposés of its abuses, Scientology, blending self-help, pseudoscience, and religious doctrine involving past lives and extraterrestrial influences, because cults always promise space travel, stickers in the shop, continues to maintain a stronghold in Hollywood. These groups thrived by offering members a distinct identity, us, a compelling cause, and a clear enemy, them, be it the government, societal systems, or outsiders perceived as unenlightened. In the 1980s and 90s saw the rise and fall of high control groups like Osho's Rajneesh movement, which built a compound in Oregon and gained notoriety for a bioterror attack on the local community, and which today still operates mediation centers in over 80 countries. No one can forget Heaven's Gate, a group that took the whole us versus them thing to the extreme, rejecting the material world and embracing death as escape. Around the same time, the Branch Davidians, a splinter group of Seventh-day Adventists led by David Koresh, engaged in a 51-day standoff with federal agents in Waco, Texas, that ended in a fire, killing 76 people. Cults of this time adopted new packaging, self-help, corporate training, and wellness movements wrapped in a thin veneer of empowerment. But underneath was the same old control, coercion, and strict division between insiders and outsiders. In today's world, cults haven't vanished. They've simply adapted to modern platforms and methods. Social media transformed conspiracy movements like QAnon into global phenomena by convincing followers that they alone possess the truths and everyone else is deceived. In 2025, QAnon may be no more, but it doesn't need to be. Its conspiracy theories and us versus them mentality are thoroughly entrenched in mainstream culture and politics. As explored in other chapters, modern cults can take the form of MLMs, toxic workplaces, self-help movements, insular online communities, and arguably many organized religious groups. America's unique culture has infused them with many culty attributes. And then, of course, there's politics. You can get pre-orders of Culting of America attached here.